Good morning and welcome to the Sunday service. This morning we are going to meditate few minutes. After the meditation there are Dhamma talk. Right now Venerable Rathanasara is going to lead the loving kindness meditation.
Okay, everybody, just close your eyes gently. And also relax your whole body. And just few minutes, keep your attention to the surrounding sounds. Okay, now take a long breath and just hold for 1 second and breathe out. So now you can practice the loving kindness meditation. Repeat after me in your mind silently. May I be well and happy, peaceful and free from suffering. May no harm come to me. May no difficulties come to me. May no problems come to me. May I find fulfillment. And also be patient, courage, understanding, and determination to meet, overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. May my parents be well and happy, peaceful and free from suffering. May no harm come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May no problems come to them. May they also find fulfillment. May they be patient, courage, understanding, and determination to meet, overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. May my brothers and sisters, and also my teachers and all Dhamma teachers be well and happy, peaceful, free from suffering. May no harm come to them. May no problems come to them. May no difficulties come to them. May they also find fulfillment. May they be patient, courage, understanding, and determination to meet overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. May my enemies and all friends be well and happy, peaceful, and free from suffering. May no harm come to them, may no problems come to them, may no difficulties come to them. May they also find fulfillment. And all the animals and all living beings, humans, all devas and all the nagas, be well and happy, peaceful and free from suffering. May no harm come to them, may no problems come to them, may no difficulties come to them. May they also find fulfillment. And also in this planet and all the planets and all the universe and all the directions, north, south, east, west, all the directions, all beings, be well and happy, peaceful and free from suffering. May no harm come to them, may no difficulties come to them, may no problems come to them. May they also find fulfillment. If someone try to hate me in their mind, and also if they try to compassion to me, and also if they try to make problems to me, all kind of people, be well and happy, peaceful and free from suffering. May no harm come to them, may no difficulties come to them, may no problems come to them. May they also find fulfillment. And also be patient, courage, understanding, and determination to meet, overcome inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. You can practice this loving kindness meditation mindfully and silently until when you hear the bell sound.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Ven Rathanasara, leading the Metta meditation. Right now, time for the Dhamma talk. Today, our speaker, Reverend Kusala. So you can start your Dhamma talk right now.
Okay, December 1st. It's flying by, almost time for January and 2025. Will it be a better year? Will it be a worse year? Will it just be a year? I think in Buddhism it'll just be a year. No good or bad. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Heart Sutra today, because the Heart Sutra is very important. Every Sunday it's chanted here, and every day around the world in the Mahayana temples it's also chanted. And why do they have such reverence for it? I said to myself. And it turns out, according to me, that what we're talking about is ultimate reality, which is something very few people ever talk about because there really aren't any words to describe it. That's the fun part. What words would we use to describe ultimate reality? And what triggered this idea was last month when I gave a talk, there was a question. Is Buddhism about finding the true self? And I said no. Buddhism is about finding the not self. True self, not self, true self, not self. All these selves. And then I thought about the Heart Sutra. And it starts off with describing the not self. Go figure. So Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, when practicing deeply the perfect wisdom, clearly saw that all 5 skandhas are empty and pass beyond all suffering. Form does not differ from emptiness, and emptiness does not differ from form. Sensation, conception, perception. What is it that the 5 skandhas are trying to describe? They're trying to describe a human being. Okay? So, form, sensation, perception, volition, and consciousness. The 5 skandhas. That takes the place of a self. That takes the place of a person. And what starts to arise out of all that is the fact that nothing exists independently. That all form is a composition. It's been created by parts. It's been put together by mind. And so we see something that stands apart, that exists separately, and it's illusion. It's an illusion. It's not real. And yet we give it that sort of reality because we need to be able to think and act and speak. So how did it all start? How did that form thing start? Well, it may have started this way. You're just a little guy or a little girl, and mom was saying, chair, chair, chair. And one day you said chair. And when you said chair, what you did was you took that chair out of the background and placed it right in front. And you saw that chair as being separate from the floor, from the walls, from the ceiling, from the door. It had its own life now. And you had a word for it, chair. And from then on, as soon as somebody said that word, a picture arose in your head of a chair. And if you ask 10 people to think of a chair, they will think of 10 different chairs. Because we all have our chair. Language is an amazing thing because language allows us to build the world. Without language, we would just experience the world. But with language, we can think the world. We can build it. So form. Form does not differ from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. Empty. This is sort of a Mahayana perspective. So in Theravada, there was anatta, not self, which worked really good in India 2,600 years ago. But then we got psychology and psychiatry. We started to understand at some level how consciousness and the mind worked. And then we had Freud and we have Jung and we have all these people telling us what's going on in our head. Now, whether you believe that's the case or not is up to you. There's a little question going on, you know. And then we had like Tim Leary and Ram Dass, and they decided to investigate their head in a very chemical way and came up with some interesting conclusions as well. But basically, we don't necessarily introspect about how we're thinking or why we're thinking. We're just sort of thinking. Okay, so that thinking allows us to have form. And form is empty of what? Empty of independent existence. Form is always conditional. Okay, so now we get to the second one, and that is sensation. So what about sensation? Why does Buddhism think sensation is important? It seems to be the whole start of the process. That when we have a sensation, it can get our attention. So how many sensations does Buddhism have? Buddhism has 3 sensations: good, bad, and indifferent. Now the thing about the indifferent sensations is basically it doesn't catch our attention. We don't pay too much attention because we're not aware of it. It's not good or bad. It's not pleasurable or painful. It's just, you know. But then you're walking down the street and there's a bakery over there and you smell the fresh bread and that's a sensation and it just freaks you out. I need to get some of that bread. That starts the whole thing. And you can envision what the bread looks like. You know how it smells. You want to taste it. Wow. Okay. So if we have a pleasant or unpleasant sensation, it will catch our attention. And that's the second skandha. Now we come to perception. So we have form, we have sensation, and then we have perception. Now perception requires us to have our sense doors working. And if you're a Buddhist, you know that we have 6 sense doors, not 5. We have an extra one. So what are the sense doors? They are nose to smell, tongue to taste, eyes to see, ears to hear, skin to touch, and mind to think. Thinking is one of our sense doors. How cool is that? So we have now perception takes this sense door information and creates a story. It creates a reality for us. It builds it. And it's built from experience and education and preference. And it's built in many different ways. But it allows us to be able to think the world, not simply experience the world. And that thinking the world has made our life as a human being much different, much more complicated, and perhaps much more enjoyable as well. Because we get to think. How lucky are we? And we're thinking all the time. Once that started, it just never stopped. We just keep thinking and thinking. Right now the Chargers are playing. I wonder if they're winning. Thinking, thinking, thinking. Is there any reality to our thinking? Basically, no. You know? You can have a master's degree from UCLA, and nobody would ever know, because it's just the way you're thinking. You're thinking differently now. You're thinking like a master's degree. How lucky are you? But nobody will know. Oh man, how disappointing is that? $40,000 for that master's degree, and nobody knows. Maybe I could just carry the diploma around with me and show people. See? See? See how much I can think? Wow, how good would that be? So if it just stays at perception, it doesn't mean anything to anybody but you, because it's your sense stores taking information and creating the story, basically the story of your life, but it could be the story of the Rams or the Chargers or the Democrats or the Republicans. It could be a lot of different kinds of stories, but still there's stories. And a lot of people have heard the phrase, it's the thought that counts. I'm here to say, no, it's not the thought that counts. There are a lot of people thinking really great thoughts, and nothing ever comes of it. It doesn't change anything, except the way you feel about yourself. Well, that was really a good thought I just had. Look how good I am. Doesn't mean anything. Come on. So what's the next skandha? The next skandha is volition, volitional activities. So we need to change our perception into activity. We need to change our thought into activity. And that's the hard part, because it means you have to do something. And Buddhism isn't about being Buddhism. Buddhism is about doing Buddhism. Buddhism is a practice. We need to practice. You just can't think like a Buddhist, because nothing comes of that. You got to do something. And that's one of the reasons why Rebecca and I wrote the book Urban Dharma. Because it's about doing stuff. It's about getting out into the world, making a difference. You don't even have to do a lot of stuff. A lot of people on Thanksgiving, if you watched any of the news on Thanksgiving, okay, it was amazing. So many people were out there. They were helping feed people. You know, and they were cooking and baking and serving and talking and just making a difference, making the lives of those who didn't have a family or food just a little bit better. That seems to be what Buddhism is all about. Buddhism is about two things. Number one, why we suffer, and number two, how to end that suffering. And you're not going to end the suffering just by thinking about it. You got to go out and do something about it. And so, what do those Buddhists do? Well, a lot of them just sit for very long periods of time like a frog on a rock. What does that do? That gets the perception ready for volition. That gets the thought process ready for activity. So there you sit quietly and you let go of the thinking. Have you ever tried to meditate and let go of your thinking? Doesn't work. Can't do it. Thinking doesn't care. It's like asking the ear not to hear, or the eye not to see, or the tongue not to taste. The tongue can't understand what you're saying or thinking. You know, the ear can't either, the eye can't either. Okay, so what do you need to do? What do you need to do? You need to disassociate with the thinking. You need not to be the thinker. You need just to have thinking happening. So there you sit quietly, watching your breath, 1, 2, 3, up to 10, down to 1, 1, 2, 3, and eventually, what happens is the thought process sort of gets muted a little bit, a little more quiet. There's a little distance between the one thinking and the thoughts being thought. And then all of a sudden, if you're lucky, with a little bit of practice, what happens is it's just the thoughts. And there's no one thinking. Okay, because that one would be you. And so you wouldn't ever get past the thoughts. But if the thoughts are just happening and you're not thinking them, literally, then you have a chance at freedom. You have a chance to be who you always have been, which is nobody. Nobody. How scary is that? What happens when you become nobody? It means everything's a possibility. You're not restricted. You're not looking at yourself in a very specific way. And you know what you can do and you know what you can't do. But when you become nobody, you don't know what you can do and you don't know what you can't do. Everything becomes a possibility. Freedom. Cool. Cool. Okay, so we've got form, sensation, perception, volition, and consciousness. Now, this kind of consciousness is not like Freud or Jung. This is just like a chalkboard that hasn't been written on yet. This is the consciousness that enables everything else to happen. So if you're unconscious, nothing works. But if you're conscious, you have the possibility of perception and volition and sensation. All those things rely on consciousness. And form, to be perceived, needs consciousness too. So it's a raw, unfiltered consciousness that allows you to think and act like a human being. And if you think about it, all these people are taking drugs to alter their consciousness. And you would think, why would anybody take drugs to alter their consciousness? Life is just one big hallucination anyway. There's nothing going on out there that's going on in here. This is just an amazing event we're all experiencing. This reality, this life of ours, this perception, this volition, this consciousness. This is so cool. How lucky are we? And as we age, it gets a little dull. Things aren't quite as clear and crisp as they used to be. But you know what? That's how it's supposed to work. You don't want that 18-year-old consciousness when you're 80. Why is that? Because in a couple years, you're going to be dead. You don't want a lot of clarity before you die. You want a lot of compassion and feeling and sensation. But to be able to go into death with a clear mind, neither perception nor non-perception, neither form nor formless. How would that be? How would that transition be? How smooth would that transition be? You know, and until you get to be a certain age, you don't really think too much about dying, you're thinking about living. But you get to a certain age, and dying becomes an important consideration. How do I die well? What's the secret to die well? And you go to your church, and they say, well, you got to have faith. What happens if you don't have faith? What do you do then? Well, you got to believe in Amitabha Buddha. What if you don't believe in Amitabha Buddha? Well, there's the bardos, the transformation of consciousness as you lose your consciousness in death. But I didn't read that book. What am I supposed to do? What are the feelings and sensations that are important? And the one that keeps coming to my mind when it's time would be to be kind and compassionate to yourself. This body and mind has taken you through so many adventures and travels, and it's never really required much except a little sleep, water, and food. maybe a pair of shoes or two. But it's never complained so much. The mind does. The thinking complains all the time. But has my left arm ever complained about the journeys I've been on? No, it doesn't care. It doesn't even know it's on a journey. It's just an arm. It's there to have a hand on the end so I can pick things up and move things around. Can we get to that place in our practice where just before it's time for us to go, we let go? And if you're meditating on a regular basis, you know how that is. You know what to do. You know what it feels like to let go. Because every time we sit down in meditation, we're letting go of everything for 20 minutes. Sometimes we don't really succeed in letting go of everything for 20 minutes. Sometimes we're lucky to get a minute or two in there of letting go. Because you got so much on your mind, you have so much to do, your body hurts. It's just too much to let go of. But with a little time in practice, that letting go becomes easier and easier and bigger and bigger. And at that last moment, you let go of everything forever, not just 20 minutes. But then what happens now? Rebirth, man, right there. Sometimes 49 days, sometimes not even that long. You get to do it all over again. And the problem is, you forgot everything you learned in the last lifetime. You didn't even know you had a lifetime before. This seems like the first one. And people say, well, where were you before you were born? How long ago was that? Gosh, that was forever. Mark Twain at one point said, you know, before I was born, it didn't seem so bad. It seemed to be okay. Then I got born. Nothing but problems. Nothing but challenges. So isn't that interesting how we can take these 5 skandhas and substitute them for self, and then we can understand at a really interesting Buddhist psychological level what it means to be human and experience the world. Yeah, okay. And what good is that, though? What good is it to be able to experience the world like that? Well, I think it allows us to be free from the sense of self, which allows us not to have to defend self when people are critical about ourself, not to have to defend ourselves from ourselves when we get too critical. Every time you look in the mirror and you go, you know, if I had a choice, would I look like this? You gotta let that go too. You know, so the idea of being selfless is the idea of going through life without any kind of friction. Any kind of friction. One of my favorite stories, there was this Tibetan monk who went into a cave 10 years. And he finally succeeded in becoming enlightened. And he was really excited about that. So he left the cave and went down into this small town, and somebody bumped into him, and he got angry. And you just go, wow. Even 10 years may not be long enough in a cave. So if he had been selfless, that would have been a non-incident. That would have been not good, not bad, but indifferent, or not important, or maybe not even noticed. So can we use our practice? Can we use the idea of not self in a good, positive way? And then when it comes time to be a self, you have to be that self. You can't just be not self all the time. Though there are yogis in India who seem to be not self all the time. But can we be not self when it's important to be not self, and can we be self when it's important to be self? But not be attached to that self. Realize it's just a process. It's just part of having a mind and a body. So when the CHP pulls you over and says to you, I need to see registration and insurance and driver's license, and you say, why, yes, sir, here it is. Yes, that's me. I'm the guy in the driver's license. And he goes, thank you, I thought that was the case. But self arose and needed to be there at that moment because the officer needed to talk to somebody. And if you had said to the officer, you know, I'm a Buddhist, I meditate, and I'm really not the self you think I am, it doesn't work. And if you're with your family on Thanksgiving and you say, well, you know, I'm not the brother that you thought I was, I'm not self. They'd say, why don't you go sit at the kids' table over there and talk to them? You know, it's just like, so we need to be self, and we have the opportunity to be not self when it's appropriate, and it makes our life much more skillful, and we suffer less, and the people around us suffer less as well. Thank you for listening to the self that was speaking today. Any comments or questions about what I said or what I didn't say? Okay. I nailed it on the head. Everybody feels comfortable with what I said? Yes, yeah.
I may have one. So I've spent a lot of time trying to understand the Heart Sutra, and it's tough.
It is.
It is difficult.
It is.
Right? But I had this kind of epiphany when I saw a rainbow one day, and it made sense to me that emptiness is form and form is emptiness. Because when you see the rainbow, the conditions are water droplets and sun. It's actually the exact same thing. So the emptiness of the conditions, the form, so that made sense. But my question is, when you start to understand that we're fabricating so much, right, and you start to maybe get a taste of the ultimate,
Mm-hmm.
how do you overcome the fear that everything that I've known for 41 years may be a little bit of a fabrication? How do you push past that?
A little bit. A big fabrication.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really scary. But it's a way of coming to terms with the ultimate reality. And our meditation practice allows us to be calm and centered in those moments of great fear and confusion. That we just say to ourselves, I don't know. And that's good enough. That's a very Zen way to do it. But that's good enough. That's all you need to say next time you're really fearful about something is, you know, I don't know.
Sure.
And then the next thing will happen, and the next thing will happen. My sister, I was talking to my sister just the other day. She is 74 years old, and she's having some leg problems. And she went on YouTube, and she saw a video of how to walk correctly. And she said, for 74 years, I've been walking incorrectly. And I said to her, does it matter? You going to try to walk correctly now? You know, and she's practicing to walk correctly now at 74. And I said, well, think of it as a meditation. You're being mindful of every step you take now, wherever you go. And she said, yeah, but I'm still going to practice walking in the correct way. She's not a meditator, and she doesn't. But she likes YouTube. And so I thought to myself, yeah, you know, she just assumed that everybody just walked correctly because they were walking. But there might be a more correct way to walk and a less correct way to walk. But after 74 years, does it really matter? What matters is the uncomfortableness of the legs and the feet and the ankles. And if walking correctly now reduces that suffering, that's a good thing. But if it doesn't change anything, I don't know. Maybe you don't need to change that much. Maybe it's okay. But she's having some problems, and she's trying to find some solutions. And one of the solutions was a YouTube video. And I said, great, it's free, it's not drugs, you know, and if that little, you know, if that little tidbit on how to walk correctly makes a difference, fantastic, worth its weight in gold. But I thought, we all think a certain way, and as we progress through our decades of life, that changes. You know, and what we took for granted, we now look as very important, and what we thought was really important, now we don't really care that much. And at some point, you're not going to really be as connected as you have been because it just seems sort of meaningless. But you don't want your life to be meaningless because you could still have an opportunity to be of service and reduce suffering, and also reduce suffering in your own life. So you don't want to get to that place of indifference where it really doesn't matter. It always matters, but the part that matters now is the kindness and compassion. It's not the intellectual gymnastics that you went through in your younger years to become somebody. You know, and it's good to be somebody, but as you study the Heart Sutra, you realize that somebody doesn't exist in the way you thought it did, and it's better to do than to be. And Sinatra said the same thing. Do. No. And so it's just like, okay, yeah. So the fear, just when you look at it directly, just say, I don't know. I don't know why I'm afraid. I don't know why I should be afraid. And just sit with it for a while. How does it feel? Does it have a physical sensation as well as a mental sensation? Yeah, most of the time it does. You know, and you go, okay. Can you relax into it? Can you let the mental stuff go a little bit so it's not as edgy, not as critical, not as scary? Yeah, I think, yeah, maybe. You know, and a lot of people now are faced, you know, with a lot of stuff, you know, the economy and making a living and traffic in LA and all the stuff that we deal with every day. It's tough. It's hard. It's hard to live in an urban environment and be calm, collected, and happy, you know? So that's why we practice. We practice so we can live here and not go insane. There you go. Thank you. No.
Yes. Whenever I read or I chant the Heart Sutra, the part of form, all Dhamma are marked with emptiness.
Yes.
So it reminds me about a story. 3 monks debate each other about the flag.
Mm.
The flag, one monk said that the wind fly.
Makes the flag move.
Yeah.
Okay.
And another one said, no, the flag flying. Right? One said the wind, and one said...
Let me help you.
Yeah.
One says the wind, and one says the mind. It's the mind that's moving. And the other monk says, no, it's the wind that's moving. Uh-huh. And so the master comes up.
But based on the Heart Sutra, all Dharma are marked with emptiness.
Right.
So neither one of them, for me, I think that this both of them is not right either, because all Dharma are marked with on the
Emptiness.
emptiness.
Right. And you would be right at an ultimate level. So what you're saying is that what you heard was a category error in this story. And the category error was dualistic. You couldn't have one, you had one and you had two. And dualism always requires two or more. But what you're saying is that the emptiness is one or nothing. So that would be the ultimate reality. But that can't be translated into the relative reality, so it wouldn't be a story. A story needs two or more. So you're right. You're right. The ultimate reality is emptiness. And what you're seeing is the category error. That it's not a true story because you saw the big picture, the empty picture, the everything picture, the nothing picture.
Because I chant the Heart Sutra, that's why I feel this is kind of a lot of debating with, I don't know, based on
Well, you could say that. That's reading a lot into that story, but you could say that. You could probably even write a book about that.
No, just
No.
just something, you know, it's make me think that's why this story come from. The people who create this story, they understand about the Sutra. The Sutra is really, this is very high, very, you know, hit
It's the ultimate reality
yeah.
written in a relative way.
Right.
And that's why it doesn't make sense. If you just read it like a story, the Heart Sutra makes no sense at all. But it's the ultimate reality written at a relative level. And that's why you sit in meditation. That's why you chant it every day. You want to break through that relativeness and get to that ultimate. And it takes a long time. But then once you do, somebody says, well, what do you understand to be true in the Heart Sutra? And you go, I'm sorry, I have no words. I have no words. I can only suggest that you too meditate and read the Heart Sutra every day. And one day you will know, you won't understand though. I consider understanding as an intellectual. You won't understand, but you will know, intuitive, what the Heart Sutra means. And that's really a bummer because you like to share that knowledge, but it's not knowledge. It's a direct experience. How do you share that? You know, how do you share the direct experience of going to the Grand Canyon with somebody who's never been there? You know, only relative stories. Oh, it's beautiful. It's all the colors. It's really deep. Mountains around. It's just wonderful. You get it there. You get a taste. You get an idea. But still, the direct experience. And Buddhism is an empirical philosophy. The Buddha didn't go to philosophical school and learn all this stuff. The Buddha experienced it. He experienced all that stuff. And then he tried to share his experience with everybody. And it was difficult. You know, so some of the first 5 that listened to him got it. Some didn't, though. And there's a lot of people who are trying to get it and don't. And a lot of people who didn't think they'd ever get it, and they do. And it's empirical experience. So you have to put yourself in a variety of situations in order to experience it. So retreats, you've got to go on retreats once in a while. Got to meditate once in a while, every day, hopefully. Usually alone, because going to the center or the meditation hall is, you know, difficult sometimes. And once you start doing that on a regular basis, stuff starts to happen and change internally, but there's no way to really gauge it and judge it. You know, somebody once said, it was Ram Dass, I was listening to one of his talks today, and he said, when I first started the spiritual practice, I figured it would only take 10 years to become enlightened. And then he just left. He said, I was so wrong. I was so wrong. And so we don't know when enlightenment's going to happen and what it's going to be like. What's it going to be like? Are you going to have supernormal powers? Those aren't very useful. Are you going to be able to be kind in every situation? That would be useful. The Buddha seems to have been kind in every situation, though sometimes he was forceful because he needed to make a point. But these kinds of things we just let, it's like a crock pot, you know? You put all the ingredients in there, you close that lid, and let it brew. And all of a sudden, you open it up, and there it is. So thanks for the story.
It just, you know, my always think, whenever I chant or I read the Heart Sutra, I always thinking about the story, why this monk fighting about that, when if they know about the Heart Sutra, all Dharma are marked with emptiness, so nothing to fight for.
Well, the reason they're fighting is because they're human beings, and they're not enlightened. That's why they're fighting.
So am I.
Don't expect too much, you know. It takes a long time to be more than a human being. We're sort of stuck, you know. It's a great place to be, better than being a cat or a dog, but it takes a long time to transcend humanness. So, you know, so it's like, Yeah, I could give a lot of examples, but I won't. So it's just like, we just have to be patient and calm and not expect too much from our fellow human beings. If they're kind to us and generous, you know, that's better than most people, you know? And so can we understand that being a human being is not enlightenment, but it's better than being a lower, the potential is there, better than any lower life form. And we can change who we are. You know, cats and dogs are pretty much who they're going to be. But we can learn and practice and understand and have insight and change who we are, literally transform. And eventually transform ourselves into a spiritual being. You know? But even when you become that spiritual being who's enlightened, it's okay to say no. That goes with the territory. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
Can you just check my understanding of that?
Sure.
So if we pretended that there was a material in a whole,
Okay.
substance, right? We grab that material and then you layer causes and conditions on top. And based on those causes and conditions, that material could be a planet, a flower, a human, a Buddha statue. And all of those things are constantly interacting with each other, not necessarily realizing that they're linked and that they share the same suchness. Is that on the right track?
I would say no. I would say what you just described is God
Okay.
taking the stuff out.
Yep.
It took him 7 days. Well, he rested on the seventh day. So I would say it's an empty bowl. You know? And out of that emptiness comes form. Now, how does that work? I don't know. No clue. But it's fascinating. You know? So everything comes out of nothing. And if it was something, okay, like the goo in the bowl, it couldn't be anything else. So it has to start with nothing to become something. And that takes a while to wrap your head around. Yeah. But you're thinking about it in the right way. You're just trying to find that first cause.
And there's no first cause.
And there's no first cause. It's just a continuum, big circle. Really frustrating. Because we like to know how it all started.
Fascinating, though.
It is fascinating.
Yeah.
To have no first cause, that eliminates God. Big Bang Theory. Eliminates a lot of stuff. You know? Wow.
Yeah.
Can we be okay with that? Can we rest in the mystery, they might say? I think we can. I think we can, because once we detach from the thinking and realize it's just thinking, and not me thinking, then we are a lot closer to that original emptiness than we were when we thought about it. And it seems perfectly okay. Yeah. So that's good. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you again. We'll chant the page 4 and page 10 right now. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Saranam gacchami, dhammam saranam gacchami, sangham saranam gacchami. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. The eluding passions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them all.
to study them all. Buddha's way is supreme. I vow to attain it. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and the sick find health relief.